Bill Gates. But I'm not sure Bill Gates knows how much Norm meant to him. Because when Norm came here to give what I think will be seen as his valedictory speech, by 60 years of fighting hunger, he was becoming despondent and discouraged that there wasn't the research, there wasn't the money, there wasn't going to be the support needed to continue his work. And then rust disease came back, and it looked even more bleak. And then Bill and Melinda Gates stepped forward and stepped into the breach and created AGRA and started funding projects and started bringing the focus and started generating the interest that now has these issues at the top of our agenda. And I think the happiest moment of the last year of Norm's life was when he went to Mexico for the conference with the group that the Gates Foundation is funding to deal with rust disease, which his old nemesis that was coming back. And so, in introducing Bill Gates, I want to say how much you meant to Norm and how much you let him leave us with the thought that it wasn't going to be lost, that there was hope for the future, and that we could once again prevail. And you have inspired us, Mr. Gates, with your impassioned commitment to end hunger and poverty. Please join me in welcoming Bill Gates.
Ambassador Quinn, for that very generous introduction. And thank you all for the honor of speaking to this distinguished audience. Like all of you, when I made plans to attend this symposium, I'd hoped to be able to see Dr. Borlaug. His passing is certainly cause for sadness, but his life should make us optimistic. In the middle of the 20th century, experts predicted famine and starvation. But they turned out to be wrong, because they did not predict Norman Borlaug. He not only showed humanity how to get more food from the earth, he proved that farming has the power to lift up the lives of the poor. It's a lesson the world is thankfully relearning today. I want to congratulate Dr. Ajita for his discoveries in drought and pest-tolerant sorghum that earned him this year's prize. I'd also like to acknowledge Gordon Conway, whose book, The Doubly Green Revolution, first got me enthused about agricultural work. And I'd like to recognize the researchers, policymakers, and activists who have spent their lives fighting poverty and hunger through improving agriculture. The world's attention is back on your cause. Now, each of us have come here and developed our interest in agriculture through a different path. And I want to take a moment to talk about how Melinda and I came to this work. When we started our foundation, we agreed that the basic principle driving our priorities should be a belief that all lives have equal value, that every person deserves a chance to live a healthy and productive life. Over time, our search for the greatest leverage brought us to the most compelling challenge in development. How do you help those people who live on less than $1 a day? They face huge difficulties. How can they get some traction so that their daily struggle leads to a better life? A key answer is in the work they do. 3/4 of the world's poorest people get their food and income by farming small plots of land. So if we can make those smallholder farmers more productive and have more profit, we can have a dramatic impact on hunger and nutrition and poverty. Melinda and I believe that helping the poorest smallholder farmers grow more crops and get them to market is the world's single most powerful lever for reducing hunger and poverty. Of course, the idea that better farming can end hunger and poverty is not new. It was demonstrated by Dr. Borlaug. It was honored with the Nobel Prize. It was called the Green Revolution, and it helped avert famine, save hundreds of millions of lives, and lift whole countries out of poverty. It was certainly one of the great achievements of the 20th century. But it didn't go far enough. In particular, it didn't go to Africa. Africa is the only place where per capita cereal yields have been flat over the last 25 years. The average farmer in sub-Saharan Africa gets just over half a ton of cereal per acre. An Indian farmer gets twice that, a Chinese farmer 4 times that, an American farmer 5 times that. The technology and new approaches that are transforming agriculture in other parts of the world can be applied in new ways and help Africa flourish as well. Now is the time. The world food crisis has forced hunger higher on the world's agenda. From NGOs to the G8 to African heads of state, there is a rush of new commitment. But there's also a problem. The global effort to help small farmers is endangered by an ideological wedge that threatens to split the movement in two. On one side is a technological approach that increases productivity. On the other side is an environmental approach that promotes sustainability. Productivity or sustainability? They say you have to choose. I believe it's a false choice, and it's dangerous for the field. It will block important advances. It can breed hostility among people who need to work together. And it makes it hard to launch a comprehensive program to help poor farmers. We certainly need both productivity and sustainability, and I believe we can have both. Many environmental voices have rightly highlighted that there were excesses in the original Green Revolution. They warn against the problems of too much irrigation or fertilizer. They caution against the consolidation of farms that could crowd out smallholders. These are important points, and they underscore the crucial fact that the next Green Revolution has to accommodate these things, and in that sense be even greener than the first. It must be guided by the needs of the smallholder. It must be adapted to local circumstances and understand how to make it sustainable for the economy and the environment. I think it's worth repeating that. The Green Revolution must be guided by smallholder farmers, adapted to the local circumstances, and sustainable for the economy and the environment. We don't want to create short-term gains for poor farmers that have long-term costs for their children. That's why we believe it's so important to work with local farmer groups. And that's why we're one of the largest funders of sustainable approaches, such as no-till farming, rainwater harvesting, drip irrigation, and biological nitrogen fixation. The environment benefits from higher productivity. When productivity is too low, people start farming on grazing land, cutting down forests, and using any new acreage they can to grow food. When productivity is high, people can farm on less land. Now, some people insist on an ideal vision of the environment, which is divorced from the people and their circumstances. They've tried to restrict the potential use of biotechnology in sub-Saharan Africa without regard to how much hunger and poverty might be reduced by it, or what the farmers themselves might want. Some voices are instantly hostile to any emphasis on productivity. They act as if there's no emergency, even though in the poorest, hungriest places on Earth, population is growing faster than productivity, and the climate is changing. According to a Stanford University study published last year in Science magazine, if farmers in southern Africa are planting the same variety of maize in 2030 that they're planting today, the harsher conditions from climate will reduce their productivity